Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. I'm your host, Richard Kaufman, also known as the Comeback Coach. Guys, this is going to be an awesome episode. If you want to learn to know why learners are earners and leaders are readers, you're going to want to listen to this episode with my brother Thurben. He's an author, speaker, investor. He does it all. He's the man with the plan, and I get to hang out with him today. Thurben, my brother, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my honor. So let me ask before we even get started, um, because we all grow up and we all have different challenges. I'm sure your life hasn't been all rainbows, unicorns, skittles, and rainbows. So I'm sure you went through some trials and tribulations. What is your definition of resiliency?
And I love that question. To, I mean, for me, resiliency is just being able to tackle life's challenges like head on and just keep moving forward until you find the solution. And also being able to have the character to just persist no matter what happens.
I love it. So now, guys, like I said, this is going to be interesting because I am a big reader. I've read over 6,000 books. I got 18 going right now, two audio books, and I just finished writing my second book. So I'm a big reader, I'm a big learner and earner. So we're going to be talking to Thurben about this whole issue. But first of all, tell us a little bit about where you come from, where'd you grow up, and tell us about the girl you were interested in that got you to start reading books.
Yeah, so I'm originally from St. Croix in the U.S. Virgin Islands. For those who don't know where that is geographically, I'm like 40 minutes south of Puerto Rico, if you know what that is.
Yeah.
But I grew up in Tampa, Florida, and that's where I've spent the majority of my life, even to this day. That's where I live. Um, and yeah, it's been a real fun time living here. Always great weather. But the girl that got me into reading, she she attended my high school, named Jordan. But she attended my high school, and for just some backstory, just so you know how I met her, because I know some people are going to be curious. So we both had a mutual friend, Brooke, and I would talk to Brooke quite a bit, but I would see Jordan in the background around school, never talked to her at all until after I left high school. And I just slid in the DMs one day because I was like, I want to date this girl. That was the logic at the time. And so I ended up starting a conversation with her, and she was the first wealthy person I had ever met in my life. And, naturally, because at the time I had like an old Mercedes that I'm driving around, and I just knew like I would drive my Mercedes around, and I would drive my mom's Toyota or my dad's Suzuki at the time, and I just knew like, man, this car feels nice. I was like, and I found out what Mercedes was because originally I had no idea what that was, but I was like, in my head, I was like, I want to get rich so I can afford something like this. That was my logic at the time, but she is ultimately what got me into reading as much as I do now, just out of that pure curiosity of how to get rich.
Okay, now I have many friends, some millionaires, some billionaires, and I was playing poker with one of them one night, and he's the owner of one of the largest timeshare companies in Florida, and we were talking, and I said, Rich, what's the difference between a poor person and a rich person? And he said it's their vocabulary, and I finally got it that wealthy people and poor people have totally different vocabulary. Like for me now, even to this day, I don't ask, how much is something, or when I ask somebody, hey, you want to invest, you want to get a book, you want to get my book, I don't have to say it costs. Well, it's going to cost $30 to invest, because rich people talk about investments, poor people talk about buying. Rich people, they talk about inflation, they talk about different financial words. So how was it? Did you grow up around hearing these financial words and talking about finances across the kitchen table when you were growing up?
No, not at all. Like, so in my household, uh, you know, my parents very modest background. Dad worked for the state. Mom was a CNA, and money was never a conversation that they ever had with us. Like, I was never taught how to make a budget. I never was taught anything about investing. The word never even came across our household. Like the most I would ever hear about money in our house was whenever my parents would argue about something like, we can't afford to get you this, and that was as far as any money talks went in my family.
Now you are a junior, so there is a Thurben senior. So I just want to give a big shout out to Pops. Hey, your son's doing great things. I just want him to say that. But you know, it's weird when we start talking about finances to people that don't know about finances. It's like we're speaking a different language. So when you started hearing all these different words, did you start talking to your parents about, hey, why don't we have tax? Why don't we have tax shelters? Why are we not investing in real estate? What did they say when you started bringing home books like Rich Dad Poor Dad and stuff like that?
Well, it's something I've never spoken to them about. And the reason why is because like they would always just kind of be very confrontational about that kind of stuff. Like it's never a conversation I can openly have with them. So instead, I made, I have rich friends now, so I would just talk to them about those different types of things. And they are who I've gotten my perspective from on that.
Okay, now I'm going to ask this because it's really interesting to me. Um, I have a lot of African American friends, and a lot of them are very rich. I mean, we're talking like real rich. We're talking wealth, and a lot of
Mhm.
times, when no matter where they're growing up, even my level, when I started, like when I opened up my phone this morning, I was looking at Lambos. I was looking at a Ferrari today. I was actually looking at a boat. But once you start looking at things different than other people, they're like, they did you ever hear anybody say, well, that's for them. This is not for us. Like I grew up on the
Nah,
streets. I'm a ninth grade dropout. But when I tell my friends, man, you know how many, because I was talking to somebody, I was like, you know how many spark plugs the Ferrari has in it? And they're like, why are you even looking at Ferraris? That's not for us. And I'm like, whoa, hey, that may not be for you, but that's for me. So did you have anybody say, hey, that rich thing, that's not for people like me and you. That's for other people.
oh, absolutely. I mean, I've had my family. My grandma would say, you know, our family's not rich, but our family's not poor. We just always get by. Like that was the saying I would hear a lot. Um, and even I had expressed interest in my dad once about getting a Ferrari, and he was like, "Oh, a Ferrari? Well, you got to get enough money where you can't even think about the price." And that was kind of the end of that conversation.
So, okay. So as we talked, we said, you've read over 300 books, but
Hmm.
after you read 20, 30 books, do you see the same ideas going from person to person that are successful and are wealthy? Because a lot of people like for me, I grew up on the streets, and I'm a big I'm a big hip hop head. So there's a certain words that you use that you hear a lot in the streets, but then you start reading books by wealthy people, and you start watching interviews with healthy people. There's certain words that they all use, the successful people. What kind of
Mhm.
words do you hear that you hear the successful people using a lot?
Hmm. Uh, I mean, so some of the things I would hear is like, I'm looking to invest my capital. I'm looking to invest my time. I'm looking to build systems. Oh, this is a good one. 'Cause I really have to think for this one. Um, what's the ROI on this? Like, and that could be applied to multiple things. So like, what's the ROI on my time? What's the ROI on this relationship? What's the ROI on my money? You know, uh, like what is it that you value? How can I serve more people? How can I do this at scale? How can I build my business? What is the foundation for my business? How can I market? How can I improve my sales?
Okay, and a lot of poor people, if you say ROI, they're going to be thinking, is that kind of some sport analogy? Is that rookie of the year? What is ROI? And when I tell everybody, it's your return on your investment. That in reality, when you really look at business or social, that every minute you spend, you're spending. You can't get that money back. It's like a dollar. Once you spend a dollar, you can't get it back. And a lot of us are just trading time for money. So, in order for me to do something, I need you to tell me, like, if you're going to promote my podcast, I'm going to say, what is my return on investment? If you can't tell me what my return on as an investment is, then I'm not going to invest with you, right? And those are just words that you start listening to and you start hearing and you start thinking, okay, if I want to buy a piece of property, what's going to be my ROI on this? Or else you're just not going to do the deal. If the deal doesn't make sense, you're just not going to do the deal, right?
Yep.
So how? And I got to know this, and I want you to tell me the first deal because you're a real estate investor. How did What books did you read to start learning about real estate investment, and then how did you get into your first deal?
Uh, so I haven't done my first deal just yet. Um, just to be transparent, but what the first book that I have read on the subject is it was a book by Grant Cardone on multifamily investing. I don't remember the exact title, but that was the first book on real estate I've read.
So now, what kind of books are you currently? I know you said you took some time off from reading because now you want to start implementing. Because I
Hmm.
know I had a gentleman. He actually books shows for Gary V, Grant Cardone, Tony Robbins, and he says the reason why 97% of the people come back to see these people because only 3% actually implement what they're being taught. So what you're doing is you read enough books for now. Now it's time for the action stage, right?
Yep, absolutely. And
So
I've
then
just
how did
been
that what was the
like,
thought process to be like, all right, I'm tired of talking about it. I want to be about it.
yeah, so there's multiple reasons. So like I got to the point where reading the books felt like I feel like I'm just rereading the same information over and over. So I'm like, I don't really, there's no value here for me in doing that. So it feels like a waste of my time if it's not something new that I'm learning. Second, like certain books are honestly, I feel like to be studied more so than just like because certain books, it's like I reread it and I look at it in a completely new light each time that I read it, which is very interesting. And I can't say that for many books. There's just a handful of them that I get that from. So I'm like rereading it so that I can study it, understand it, and I'm implementing it, piece by piece in my actual life. And then also, you know, I kind of I kind of had this realization for myself that I was like, well, which one's gonna make me more money? Reading books or selling my books? Like, well, that's the unique problem that I have as an author, like, you know, just for me personally. But, you know, it's just for me at the moment, most of the books that I have are not really teaching me anything particularly new to justify me spending my time there instead of me like focusing on like income producing activities.
Okay, and I get that. Like sometimes I love audiobooks because I don't even listen to the radio in my car anymore. Whenever I'm driving anywhere, I'm listening to audiobooks or podcasts. And sometimes I'll listen to a podcast and I'll be like, or a book, and I'll be like, that was okay. But then something will click and I'll go back and re-listen to the book again. Like I'm listening to the book by Brendan Kane, 1 million followers in 30 days, because it's interesting to me. It's a pertaining to my life now, and back then it really didn't.
You know
So
what's fun? I'm
what's
actually reading that. That's so cool.
because and I love Brendan Kane, and I act like I said I was listening to that as I walked this morning, because back then when I first listened to it, it was pertainable. But now as I'm growing my company and building it, I'm like, let me take a listen to that and let me start implementing now. So
Hmm.
what I mean now I that's weird that you have the same book that we're talking about and we don't even really know each other, right? So and I'm actually gonna tag Brendan in this when it goes out. So but so you said you're instead of buying other people's books, you want to start selling your own. So when did you start deciding that you want to be an author?
Well, I became an author almost 2 years ago. I think it was like around August, almost 2 years ago. And, I had that realization w- with how I view books this year. Last year, I was still reading at a pretty decent rate. Like, I think I finished last year with like 53 or 55 books that I read, but I didn't really have that like switch in how I thought about it until this year.
And like I said, I'm on my second book is about to be published. We sold out in 4 hours, so the book is crushing right now, and it's not even available yet. But people know, hey, this book is going to crush it. And the back cover is written by Mr. John Lee Dumas, the number one entrepreneur podcaster in the world, making 250,000 a month, and he actually taught me. But that's when I was like, okay, my first book was just a novel about me, but the second book is like, all right, it's time to change the game.
Mhm.
So what books have you written, and why did you write each book?
Yeah, so my main book that most people know me for, it's How to Read 50 Books in a Year Like a CEO. That was my first book. And then my second book is a follow-up to that one, How to Read 100 Books in a Year Like a CEO. And what got me into it was just a real simple problem people had. Like, over the course of a few years, multiple people kept telling me, like, "Hey, dude, how is it that you read so much?" Like, that was a
Yeah.
question that I kept getting over and over and over again. And so, like, it got me thinking, like, okay, if this is a problem that people have, let me create a solution. So I ended up making my book, and really it was just made for the simple purpose of just serving people that came to me with the problem of how is it that you read so much? So I wanted to give people a framework and a mindset to do what I've done repeatedly.
Okay, so and why I think this is so interesting, and why I wanted you to have you on the show is that the the richest CEOs of in the United States or in the world average between 60 and 65 books a year. And the average person that graduates high school never finishes a book in their adult life. So there's a different, and there's, average CEOs that are reading 50, 60 books, they're worth millions and millions of dollars, to where the average person, I think, in the United States makes about maybe 50,000 a year. So there has to be some kind of correlation between what they're consuming and what they're not consuming. So talk to me about what you have found, the differences between the average Joe and the CEO.
Yeah, I mean, so on a biological level, when you read like a physical book, you're actually like your brain is learning new things and new ways of like looking at the world like through books. And so like and also like usually the books that CEOs are reading are very intentional. So like for instance, let's say somebody is in the tech space, for example. A lot of them might go read books on, maybe making software as a service in their business model or how to, scale AI or so on, right? Like there's so many books out there that are like 15, 20, 25 bucks that can teach you a skill set and a set of knowledge that a lot of people around you don't know, don't have. Like literally, like Tony Robbins, one of my favorite books from him is like Money Master the Game. Like
Yeah.
literally, you have billionaires who manage hedge funds teaching you how they like diversify their portfolio by the percentage. So if your average Joe isn't reading that book, that's knowledge that he doesn't have, that he cannot act on. And versus the guy reading the book, the CEO, he reads that information, takes action on it, and it creates wealth for him. It creates riches, income, and even if they don't take action on that information, you are still better off than the guy who's not reading by a long shot. And also, just I like to use an example as well, just from a mathematical perspective. Like, let's say hypothetically you read 10 books a year and you learn 10 new things per book. So that's 100 things, that's 100 new things per year that you're learning. Whereas the CEO is reading 50 books, let's say for the sake of argument, they learn less because they're reading more. Let's say they've learned 5 new things per book that they read. By the end of the year, he would have learned 250 new things that you don't know. And then you compound that over multiple years. Now you have like a big gap. Let's say we'll do a 5 year time frame. You've learned 500 new things where he's at 1250. And then over the course of decades, the growth is exponential from there.
And I also get it because a lot of people I talk to, they're like, "Well, I don't like to read." That's the number one excuse I hear. I don't like to read. Or the number two excuse is, and guys, I'm using the word excuse, so I want you to know that. I Another person, people say, well, I don't have $30 per to buy a book. So I tell them, download Audible for $15 a month, and you can get millions of titles for $15 a month. And you don't have to read a damn thing. All you got to do is sit there and listen. But what I learned from my friend Russell Brunson, from his book, the trilogy series or the expert series, is that when I buy the audio, I buy the Audible book, and then I go to Barnes and Nobles, and I bought Brendan Kane's book, A Million Followers. So I'm listening to it and I'm reading it, and it's sticking in my brain over 70% more than it would if I just read it or if I listened to it. So, what are
Mhm.
your thoughts on that? Another way to hack the system, instead of reading 1,000 books, reading 100, but listening and reading at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, well, first thing I would say is that I don't truly believe that people hate reading. I believe people hate reading books they don't enjoy reading about subjects that don't matter to them, that aren't important to them. If you read a book on your favorite subject in the world, the thing you're most passionate about, I'm sure you would have a good time. And then even with the and then let's say for the sake of argument that you really can't afford a $30 book. That's fine. There's YouTube. YouTube University has a
Yeah.
bunch of audio books. So there is no excuse like with money, like as long as you have access to Wi-Fi, you can learn. And even I would say with listening and reading books at the same time, I mean that is like the better way to retain knowledge over time. Um, I mean you don't have to do that. It's just it's it's a good suggestion, but not necessary in my opinion.
Okay. And like we're saying, a lot of people are not buying books, but it's amazing when 50 Shades of Grey came out, they were selling billions, hundreds of millions of copies of books. So there were people reading. They were just reading different kind of stuff. So I just wanted to say, like you said, people are going to buy something if they're interested in the content. So I love that. But I'm going to go by. I wrote what you said, a couple things down, and I want to talk about it. First of all, you talk about systems, and I just had a conversation with another friend of mine. We were talking about how Burger King does not make the best hamburgers, but they have the best systems. And guys, if you don't know, McDonald's is the number one landowner in the world. And they do it because they make crappy hamburgers, but they have a great system. So talk about how important it is, even if you're an author, or if you're in business, how important your systems are for success.
I mean, you can't have success without the systems. It's it's something I read in a book once. Like, you know, systems are part of success. And like even like just how we as people operate, we all operate with systems of behavior. Like for some people, the moment their alarm clock goes off, they automatically spring into life. Maybe they go straight to the bathroom, brush their teeth, do their hair, maybe they take a shower, or maybe they go eat breakfast. Like we all have systems of behavior. Like even businesses have them. And like I would say with the people who aren't as successful as they would like to be, it's probably because of the systems that you're, currently operating with. Like your systems of thinking, like thoughts you hold, the people that you hang out with, how often you're, taking care of the important relationships in your life and in your business. Everything in life revolves around systems. Even this podcast is a system. What did you do? You booked the time with me. You
Mm.
sent me the link, and I had to, of course, join, which is all the system. So systems are unavoidable. It's just a matter of whether or not they're effective or
Okay, cool. Well, like in my profession, podcasting, I've spent upwards of almost over $60,000 now, 11,000 hours by taking courses by John Lee Dumas, Eric Allen, Zach Babcock, Travis Johnson to learn the systems that work. But I had to invest to learn these systems. And a lot of times you might have to invest in a mentor or course, a book to learn some of these systems. So, what are your thought processes? Like you said earlier, you don't know what you don't know. So
not.
sometimes if you might have to hire a mentor or get take a course or get a book to learn these systems. So do you agree with that sentiment?
Uh, yeah, I would agree, but I would also caution for people too that you don't always have to necessarily pay to invest. Like even like your time is an investment. Like the way you spend your time, let's say you're spending time learning, you know, to get the skill sets that you're looking to build, right? That is also a form of investment. And then also like your network, the people you're around, like that is also a investment, whether you pay to get them or you get them organically by meeting them at events. Like, you know, I would definitely say invest. Doesn't have to always be money and, doesn't have to be always monetary, but just invest with what you have.
And I agree 100%. And like you said, sometimes if you don't have money, that's the best way to do it. Go to YouTube University, um, go to the bookstore, or go to one of the book places, buy a cup of coffee, spend a couple hours there, get Audible. But if you do have the money, like I tell my clients, I've spent $60,000, over $60,000, 11,000 hours. If I can teach you to do what I do from thought process to profit in 8 weeks for $1,000, I can teach you what I've taught. Well, I've spent 60 grand, 11,000 hours. I can teach you in 8 weeks. It would be worth $1,000, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
If you have the money. Some people don't. Some people are just starting out. But like I always tell everybody, a lot of people won't think twice about buying a $1,500 new iPhone, but they'll think twice about hiring a coach for $1,000 that can make them $100,000.
Hmm.
Because I believe that if you have a smartphone and you're still dumb, it's your fault, right?
Absolutely.
All right. So a couple more things that you mentioned. A lot of people will start a business and not do any of the background work. They won't see because you mentioned the word scale, and a lot of
Hmm.
people they'll start a business without even know if there's an audience out there for it. So talk to us about that. Is before you even start a business, what kind of homework should you do before you even think about starting a business?
Well, there are just some basic things you might want to look at. So, like, how much competition is in your specific industry that you're getting started in, right? Maybe like, what's the barrier to entry? So, like, are there certain costs that you have to incur before you can even get started? And then, do you have the capital to, get started in that business? Um, then things like, you know, what's the market for your service? Like, what's the market for your services like? Like, is that market growing? Is it shrinking? Is it staying stable? Um, and then even too, then also, like, what systems do you have or can you set up to be able to scale that? Like, is it just you by yourself? Will you need employees? Will you need technology to help you scale? And also, do you have like the resources to be able to make all of that happen? And then also, you as the operator of the business have to be willing to scale. Like some people are just content to just say, hey, I want to make 100K a year and leave it at that. So there also has to be a desired component to grow the business.
And and I think you're going to agree with me. You also have to keep up with the times. You have to keep up with technology. Like if Thurben would have wrote you say if you were going to go on Shark Tank one time and you're going to hang out with Mark Cuban and you're going to start hanging out with the guys from Shark Tank and you're like, all right, guys, I wrote this amazing book about 50 books for CEOs, and I'm so excited because we're going to put it out on cassette tape only. What do you think they would do if you said, "Okay, I got the greatest book ever, but it's only going out on cassette"?
And they
Do you
would
think they would
laugh.
let you know? Well, the reason why I bring that up is because a lot of people don't realize how quickly technology is moving. So you have to keep up with the times. And some people are like, like for me, my book May 1st, it's going to be in Walmart, Barnes and Nobles, Amazon, but it's all going to be available digital also. So, because, and the good thing about digital or evergreen is that when I go to bed at night, I'm still making money 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because somebody in the Philippines or in the UK might be looking for a book and they just might pick up my book. So, talk about how important it is to have evergreen products, especially in today's digital world.
I mean, yeah, so I'll use myself as a personal example on this. So when I made my first book, I got my book made in every format possible. So I got paperback, I got hardcover, I got ebook, and I got audiobook. Now, as I started, you know, doing like just selling my book organically through like word of mouth and just direct to consumers, a lot of people would honestly buy my book paperback, and then some people would ask me, "Hey, do you have the audiobook version of this? Because I can't do paperback. Like I don't read physical books. I got to do audio." And so being able to say yes to that concern before it even arises is like vital because if you're not in today's digital landscape, being able to serve your customer in as many ways as possible, all you're doing is losing business, and that then turns into, instead of a sale, you just, one, you're not serving someone, and two, let's say you never run across that person ever again, and somebody else down the street makes a book designed just for them. Well, you just lost business to a competitor as well. So um, you got to be able to, in today's landscape, just be able to have as many ways to service your customer. It's just a requirement.
And that's like my new book, like you said, the one that's coming out in the ebook form. Everything actually has clickable links. So if you want to
Mhm.
start your podcast on Podbean, click here. If you want to start getting an affiliate marketer, if you want to get affiliates, click here. So people will actually use that as a podcast in a box. And I think that's what makes mine a little bit different. Because I thought, what would I want if I had to start a podcast and I wanted to do it myself? Well, why not I put all the clickable links in there? And this way you can start it out. But then I also have it where I upgrade to, if you want me to teach you, I'll personally teach you for 8 weeks. So I think, like you said, you kind of have to have a little bit for everybody.
Hmm.
And I think it's very important that something you said was that everybody consumes on a different level. Like
Hmm.
some people watch podcasts, some people go on YouTube, listen to podcasts. So I think for me, if I put a pod like our episode, when I put it out, it's going to go out in blog form, it's going to go out in long form, it's going to go out in audio and video. So I think you have to go where your customers at, and I think that's something that Gary Vaynerchuk is talking about right now. Is you got to go where the eyes are, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So let's talk about something else. My friend James Clear wrote an amazing book, Atomic Habits. He's got a brand new app. So, guys, if you get a chance to check out his new app, it's truly amazing. But even he says in his book that 40 to 60% of everything we do is habits. So, with all the books you've read, what are some of the success habits that some of the most successful people, what kind of habits do they have that the average Joe doesn't have?
Hmm. So there's a few that readily come to mind. So like working out is definitely a big one because health as well. Another I would say is having a calendar that they stick to. You're not gonna just randomly call them and get them to pick up. Like, no, if it's not scheduled, I'm not handling this call. Or maybe they have white space in their calendar where they can just allow interruptions. So having a calendar that they stick by. Three, they invest, and they're also learning about investing constantly. It's not just a one-time thing that you learn, you're done. They're always learning about investing and actively investing themselves. They're always networking. I think your average Joe doesn't probably spend enough time just building relationships and meeting with people that could, potentially you could either add value to them or they could add value to you. And also, just taking care of their diet, just very simple things, taking care of their diet, eating healthy food. Ooh, let's see.
But I really like that because that I did it. I'm big on LinkedIn. I think we have almost 30,000 followers on LinkedIn, and I did a poll of the top performers, and that those things right there: reading books, networking, and working out are like the top three things that they do that all the top CEOs do, whether it's just getting on the treadmill in the morning while watching CNBC or watching the financial news, but they're always trying to get healthier because they realize, like you said, your words, without health, there is no wealth. So,
Hmm.
I truly love what you talk about. So, what do you got going on in your world? What's going on in Thurben's world right now, and what are you working on?
Uh, so currently, I'm working on writing a fifth book. Um, I'm also looking at like doing some fix and flips. So I'm building some relationships with and vetting some contractors, talking with realtors to try and find properties, um, looking for clients. You can never have enough clients. um, Networking, taking care of like my mental well-being, and just working on myself internally. Like just doing little things like affirmations, and yeah, that's about it at the moment.
So
Off
then,
the top of
where do we find your books, and how can we get your books?
Yeah, so you can just find my books on Amazon. You could look me up by name, Thurben James, or look up how to read 50 books in a year like a CEO.
So, what social media channels are you on?
I have LinkedIn, I have Facebook, I have YouTube, I also have Instagram.
Okay. So, brother, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on. I was looking forward to talking today because reading is my one of my favorite subjects, and I'm just so grateful that we're reading the same book at the same time. That's just that's just crazy. So I can't wait to text Brendan and be like, "Hey, bro, we talked about you today, and we're both reading your book at the same time." So, guys, if you don't have that book, if you want to learn how to grow to 1 million followers in 30 days, check out Brendan Kane's book. Thurben, my brother, thank you so much. I'm so grateful for you, and I can't wait to see what you come up next because when your new book comes out, I want to be the first to buy the copy, and I want an autograph copy.
I got you, buddy.
Sound good?
Yeah.
All right, brother. So, guys, make sure you check out Thurman on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube. You won't be disappointed because he has some great stuff and some great insight. And, guys, remember, the new book is now available. Um, and I'm offering it. If you pick up the book for $30, I'm going to give you $997 in bonuses. If you pick up the book for autographed copy for just $30, you're going to get over $1,000 in bonuses from me personally. So, guys, if you want the book, just say book and I'll get that information to you. Thurben, my brother, have a great week and take care of yourself.
Hey, you as well.
Be good. And, guys, remember vertical momentum. The only way to go is up. I love you guys. Have a great week.